The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. Oakland sports, past, present, and future. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. The hosts of the show are Jerry Feitelberg and Nancy Finley? Nah, just Nancy Finley. How are ya? First, Jerry's here. Is Nancy here? Hello?
No Nancy. No Nancy.
Hello? No Nancy yet. All right. Well, we have Jerry, and we're going to start the show, and Nancy will join us when she does. We have new numbers. Everything's confusing this week. But off the air, Jerry just told me something I didn't know. Oakland icon manager, Tony La Russa. I'll let you announce it, Jerry. What happened? Where's he going?
Yeah, I just read in the news today that Tony La Russa has joined Dave Dombrowski in the Red Sox front office. He had been with the Diamondbacks for the last 4 years and now has taken his expertise to Boston.
Whoa. That surprises me for some reason. I didn't think you would. I hear somebody joined us. No,
I think that was my computer. A little ding on my computer.
Oh, I'm waiting for Nancy to join us because the three of us met in person yesterday, and it was really nice. First time we all got together, and Nancy presented Jerry with the terrific book she wrote, Finley Ball, that I've been going through for the past 4 or 5 months, and Jerry was impressed. We talked off the air, started reading it. Give me some of your thoughts, if you would, Jerry.
Oh, well, it's interesting. A lot of us knew that Charlie Finley bought the Kansas City Athletics after the death of Arnold Johnson in 1960, and I guess he took over in 61. He paid about $4 million for the franchise, which is worth how many hundreds of millions of dollars today.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a writer, a sports editor at the Kansas City Star, a guy by the name of Ernie Mail, M-E-H-L. I guess I'm pronouncing it right. And Mail had a beat writer, and Johnson was paying these two guys between $5,000 and $6,000 a month to cover the Athletics. And when Charlie took over the club, he saw that on the books, and he said, "We can't do this. We can't pay you to cover us. We don't do that stuff. It's protection money. It's the way the mafia operates." And he cut out the payments to this guy Mail, and the Mail became an enemy of Charlie Finley. And
he misjudged Mail's power, the power of the press in Kansas City.
Exactly.
Mail ended up crapping in the punch bowl for Charlie for like 5 or 6 years. Had an incredible memory, never forgot anything, and I would say that was that relationship was what was most responsible for Charlie leaving Kansas City. I think he would have been very content. He was a Midwestern kind of person. The mule thing, everything appealed to the Midwest, and
exactly.
Which leads we stop to think it isn't just the Kansas City press. The press has controlled baseball storied. Boston, you go back to Egan and Ted Williams. You go back to the power of Dick Young in New York, who ended up basically running Tom Seaver out of town.
These guys had incredible. I remember as a kid. I think Dave Egan was at the end of his career when I was a kid, but I remember reading his columns. He never had a nice word to say about Ted Williams in all the time that he was there. And they were just enemies, and then they had guys like John Gillooly, and then they had Harold Casey. But, these guys in Boston, the press, they used to dissect everything the players did. You had no privacy. It was, your life was an open book to these guys. And when I came out to the West Coast, it was a totally different relationship between the writers on the West Coast and than the writers in New York and Boston. Just unbelievable difference.
Well, we both have in common that we came out to the West Coast from the East Coast. And just to tell you that New York had 12 newspapers, and everybody was looking for a scoop. Same thing there. No privacy whatsoever.
Are you having fun without me?
Yes.
No, I can't have fun without you ever again now that we met yesterday.
Oh, good. Okay. I finally found the number.
We were talking about, I started reading your book this morning. And I'm reading about Ernie Mail and the power that Ernie Mail had. And the fact that Ernie Mail and his sports writer were getting paid money by Arnold Johnson to cover the athletics.
They were actually paying themselves. Johnson wasn't even around. They signed, Mel signed the checks.
Yeah, and then when Charlie saw the books, he said, "This has to go."
In addition, that was around the same time that he was hearing things about Frank Lane, who was suggested by Ernie Mill. Frank Lane and Ernie Mill were best friends, and Charlie didn't know that.
And we talked about Frank Lane yesterday.
Right.
And I guess Frank Lane wasn't too happy when Charlie said, "You can't trade any of the players to the Yankees."
Well, don't do what your boss says. If you're getting all that money in a Mercedes, just go with it. But I don't think Lane took Charlie seriously. Now, Ralph, you have that article I sent you from 1961 from Sports Illustrated.
I do indeed.
Okay, that was 2 months before all this hit the fan, and that quotes Lane just in like everyday situations with Charlie running the team, and you can see the huge difference. I should send that. I should copy that for Jerry because it's day and night.
Nancy, before you joined us this morning, Jerry and I were talking about how Charlie misjudged the power of the press in Kansas City. And it isn't just Kansas City. The press is powerful and has been in every baseball city. We were talking about Boston. Jerry was. I was talking about New York. And I think that were it not, just from our conversations over the weeks and months, Nancy, that were Mail not involved, if he weren't there and this, that, and the other thing, that Charlie was a perfect fit for the Midwest with the mule, with the Midwest attitudes and
people loved him.
that. Yeah. He never would have left Kansas City.
No, people loved him. That's the quotes in that other article. He was well loved.
Right.
The most loved owner in baseball. When do you hear that?
You never do.
In June 1961, you read that in that Sports Illustrated article, and it is such a difference. And yes, in fact, by the time Charlie met with Dad in the fall of '61, after that, Dad said Charlie looked like he'd been through war, and he had. And Charlie wanted Dad to come in and help from there on. And Dad was the one who got Ernie Mill's book and looked into what was going on in the 50s. read about Mill and thought, Charlie never, I know Charlie didn't know he was going to win the team. It was speculation when he went to the auction, but he was really good at poker, and he bluffed, and he won it. But he had no idea what Mill's power was in that town.
Nancy, we were talking figures of, he bought the team. What was it that you said, Jerry? $4 million?
Just under $4 million.
And you also and we also talked about what these franchises are worth today.
You know, I have the P&L for 60 for the first year, 61, and I have it for 64. Yeah, I know. It's amazing. Now, Mel's book had the Philadelphia Athletics with the word Philadelphia scratched out because he arranged to have that team move to Kansas City. It was his baby. He didn't have children, and he was so tied to this team, and Charlie didn't realize that. And
he was in set with Arnold Johnson, and when Johnson went to spring training and had that massive stroke and died, I didn't realize Johnson was only 53 years old.
Yes, and Park Carroll, who was his GM, Park Carroll had been a writer for Ernie Mill, but Park Carroll, Ernie Mill made him GM of the team. Ernie Mill was running that team because Johnson just wasn't around, and Johnson was letting Mill do what he thought should be done with that team. And Ernie, apparently, according to a book, the Kansas City and the other half of the Yankees, at no time did Mill ever criticize Johnson for anything. And
why was ownership not passed down to Mel after Arnold died?
Well, it almost was. It came very close. Mel showed up at the auction, thought no one else was going to be there. Mel got about 8 Kansas City businessmen together to pull the money. It wasn't Mel's money. It was going to be their money. He was going to be the front man, the decision maker. Things would be the same way. And he showed up to buy the team at the auction. He didn't know anyone else was going to be there. So in walks Charlie. Charlie hasn't done homework Charlie didn't know who was going to be there, but in a way, Charlie.
Well, didn't the deal fall through the first time, and this was the second auction?
No, it was the bid. The bid was if it fell through, it was with someone else because
they couldn't get the financing.
Right now, Mr. Kemper, who I mentioned in the very beginning of my book, he was very well known, still very well known in that area. Owns a lot of properties, land. He was Charlie's banker. And I stay in touch with his son because his son witnessed a lot of this too. And this is a witness I have. And the son talks about when Charlie came to his dad's house in the middle of the night. And with a dilemma, he had found that Mel was taking payments. And what do I do? And the dad really didn't know what he should do. And so that is one. That was a big confirmation source I had on it, and it was one of those things where when Charlie finally won the bid, he didn't have the money, but he went up, and Mel backed down because they couldn't come up with that, and so Charlie turned to Kemper. He called Kemper and said, "You're going to fund this for me." They had a funny relationship. They got along. But Kemper was the one who agreed to back the bid. So Charlie wins the team, but when he wins it, Mel walks up and shakes his hand. That's good. Charlie respected that. Yeah. And then Mel said, "If you're looking for a GM, I have just the right person." Charlie didn't know about Frank Lane at that moment. He wanted to make friends with whoever approached him. So he was naive in that way. And I remember Dad telling him, why did you take him up on that right away? There was a lot of second guessing on Dad's part, but Dad started looking into Mel, got Mel's book. He just thought, he thought, okay, how am I going to smooth this over? Charlie put $500,000 of his own money into that stadium before the 61 season. and he subsidized the team that year. He never wanted anyone to know he subsidized it, but he did. And that's something that Johnson never. So that was something that when everything hit the fan because of Frank Lane was interviewed by his friend Mel, and Frank Lane said he knows for a fact that Charlie is thinking about moving. I don't know how that could ever be a story nowadays, just thinking, you know what someone's thinking. But Mel played on that, and that was the only thing Mel could find to hang on to try to get the fans upset. And,
the fans. That was one of the things that Charlie said he wanted to stay there. He didn't want to move it. And Mel was fomenting the notion that he was just lying. He really wanted to.
Mel couldn't find anything else to write bad about Charlie, so he hung his hat on that. Although apparently Johnson had mentioned that he wanted to move to L.A. and then the Dodgers beat him to it, but Mel never criticized that. So, but Mel started writing that Charlie wanted to just move. He didn't like the area, didn't like the fans. That was so untrue. And then Charlie would say, well, I put all this money into the stadium. I don't want to move. Doesn't that prove it? And then Mel would find something to say, well, no, he didn't really mean it. He's going to get his money back in some sneaky way. So Mel kept harping on it, but the political figures in 61 came to our defense and said they thought Finley did a great deal for the community and, in essence, just shut up. And Mel was furious. So
didn't Mel say that the attendance was dropping because of Finley?
Oh, yes.
And the real reason the attendance was dropping is because Arnold Johnson had traded away all the great players.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that's a real reason. In fact, I used to hear Kansas City say they should have been in the 62 World Series because it was New York against the Giants. And those were players that had been traded away from Kansas City.
Including Roger Maris.
Yes.
Daly.
Roger Maris's book, by the way, I used some of that because in Maris's book, Maris could not stand Frank Lane. He talked about how Frank Lane decimated the Indians before coming to Kansas City. And someone is quoted of his opinion about Frank Lane as a narcissist and this and that. And what's interesting is it's the very thing Lane calls Charlie in his interview with Mill. It's sort of mirroring himself. And but see, I see what other people are saying about Frank Lane, like Roger Maris. And I thought, okay, this helps. This helps with the confirmation because I don't want to look like I'm biased, of course, but I want to show objectivity with what other people are saying in books that don't have to do with mine. So it was interesting.
You are amazingly biased. You look at both sides, Nancy. I really appreciate that in your book. It's not just a kiss it.
I try to find what other people say.
A couple other things that I ran across. I got the impression that your mother did not want to move from Dallas to Kansas City. She had a nice life, nice social life on the weekends, and
they were married 10 years before I came along.
And the other thing is that you spent the first 8 or 9 months of your life in Kansas City living in a hotel room at the Muhlenbach Hotel.
A suite. It was the suite that Aunt Shirley and Charlie used. And we were supposed to move into a house, and we waited a year. Mom and I waited a year before going up. Dad was already up there. We sell our house, we go up, and we're in this high-rise. It's a hotel where you had an elevator man, and he was in a suit, and then you would watch the arrow. I mean, it was like something out of Twilight Zone. That's what I think of. But I remember seeing parades out our window all the time. But it wasn't a place I was happy because it was at the top of a building, and there really wasn't anything. There wasn't a neighborhood.
Yeah, there was no backyard.
No. In fact, I remember being bored, and I was hitting the screen with a stuffed toy, and the screen went out, falling down to. I watched it fall to the ground, and that's when my mom said to Dad, "We've got to get a place."
Yeah, another thing that was in there was really, which was really kind of terrific, and I wish that this was one of the things I would have loved to have done. You said you went to the ball game and you were sitting with President Truman.
Oh,
and Harry Truman.
Yeah.
He sat next to you, and Harry Truman, in my mind, was one of the greatest presidents of all time.
Well, get this. My mom was in the Philippines in 44, 45 to help clean up what he had, Corregidor. She was there as a nurse. She had her own tent, and she was helping with the women when the war came to an end. And so, fast forward, we're there now. She's been a nurse. She worked as a surgical nurse back to Dallas after the war. So we're there, and here we're sitting on a daily basis next to Truman and his wife. And can you imagine? And one time, Mom and Aunt Shirley were going to give a party for Mr. and Mrs. Truman after a game. And Shirley had to be called back to Chicago. Her elderly father was on his deathbed, and she told Mom, "I know you can do it." So I remember Mom saying she'd never been so nervous being left to host this party for the Trumans, especially Harry Truman, former great president. And that wasn't even her political affiliation, but she had a lot of respect for him. And she said that I sat on his lap a lot. It sounds like I bugged him a lot. I remember pulling on his tie, and he brought me a box full of lollipops, which kept me very busy.
Oh, wow.
But
Harry S. Truman.
Yeah,
do you guys know what the S stands for?
It stands for nothing. It's just
You're
initial.
absolutely correct, young man. But put it in question form.
What?
I have an
like in Jeopardy. We gotta play a little Jeopardy.
I'm in Dar through an ancestor, David S. McGee, and the S stands for nothing. Interesting.
Yes.
And that's my dad's side of the family. But with Harry Truman, I remember Mom said he tweaked my cheek. He thought my cheeks were really cute, and his wife, Mom said, Bess just stood there, and I had a feeling Mom took offense that Bess didn't do anything like that with me, but Truman, she said Truman was very good with kids. He liked kids, especially little girls.
Yeah. Tell us about.
I know he loved his daughter, the piano player.
Independence.
Margaret.
He wasn't too far from Kansas City. And, he was in the same Masonic Lodge as Dad. And when the A's moved out here, Truman Truman and Dad had formed a bond, and I have an 8x10 signed by Truman.
Well, Truman was from Independence, but Kansas City.
Yeah.
He was partnership. He was in the haberdasher business with Eddie Jacobson.
Yeah.
And when Truman made the decision to vote for the creation of the State of Israel, Jacobson, who was Jewish, urged him to do so, and he did. And and that's the Kansas City influence on history today.
Wow.
You taught me something again, Jerry. Thank you. That's
looked at by everyone, no matter.
Did not know that.
Yeah. He has
good.
people respect him no matter what affiliation.
So it has to be exciting to sit with a former president.
In fact, I saw that on Twitter. The city of Independence follows me. It's interesting.
Yeah.
But I like. I know that President Truman loved being at the games. He loved what we did. All of the colored sheep, the meal. Oh, also we developed a theme song. When Charlie first bought the team, he had a theme song created. And with that, he put the Missouri Waltz, but he didn't know that it was actually one of Truman's not-so-liked songs. He did it to make Truman and the fans happy, but then Truman told him on the side, that's really not one of my favorite songs.
Well,
but anyway,
he took a shot.
Yes, and that was a 45. You remember those, and that was given away as a promo item on a day during the 61 season, and I still have 2 of those, and Cousin Paul has 2, and I found a company a few years ago that could make it into a CD, and I do not remember what it sounded like, but it was a tune we played in between innings. And so when I played it, Morgan said, "That's not a song. It doesn't have words." So I don't know. It was still called our theme song. Is there a difference?
Well,
No.
theme music.
I have another question. By any chance, do you have a program from the first game ever in the BAs under Charlie Finley played in Kansas City? They used to sell programs, but they don't do that anymore.
Well, you mean like a yearbook?
No, it used to be a program for every game. It cost maybe 10 or 15 cents back in those days.
I can look
and
through that.
It would have the lineups, and you could keep score in the book.
I could look through that things. I found one from '67, and they have ads, don't they?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. You'd have the local jeweler or the local department store, shoe store would have it.
I found one from '67 because I was back in Dallas with Mom then, and it's telling. It's really telling because you can see that no decent company will advertise with us at this time, and I see strip joints, and I'm thinking, okay, the Kansas City Star speaks loudly here. So it's just something I can see the development and how things happened. Because when we had the Beatles, we were trying to do what football does. We wanted to have really good entertainment during games. We knew MLB wouldn't allow it at all games, but we wanted to do it on occasion and get something started. So we had the Beatles perform, and the newspaper the only newspaper in the Midwest would not take our money for ads.
Really?
So their excuse was that we were just so bad.
But at the same time, I was in Montreal in 1964, and I was heading back to the border to the United States, and there was huge lines of kids all the way over. We were going by the airport, and we said, "Why are all these lines here?" The Beatles were coming to Montreal that day.
Wow.
So even without advertising, word of mouth about the Beatles in those days must have been powerful. You didn't need the Kansas City Star.
Oh, yeah. Well, there was another newspaper, and there were newspapers out in the suburbs that did promote it. But even now, I will read people about, I know these people don't like us because they'll say, well, of all the Beatles performances, Kansas City was the only one not to sell out because Finley was so bad. And that's how they'll word it. And and I'm thinking, oh, okay. But what's interesting was we were giving the proceeds to the local children's hospital.
Nice. Was Meal involved? Kansas City didn't have a team in '68, but the Royals came in '69. Was he involved with that?
He brought them. He brought them in. In fact, I've heard that there is a booth named after Mill and one named after McGuff, his writer.
Yeah.
And I have we have family friends who owned another newspaper in town. In fact, that owner had some antitrust suits against the Star and won. But apparently the Star continued what it was always doing. Truman referred to the Star in select words in the 50s. But that I have heard that Mel is the one who was credited with bringing the Royals in. And so that's another reason that when Dad wrote about Kansas City, Charlie certainly didn't want it out, because to say something like this at that time, even though it was true, that was really, I mean, Mel showed what power he had.
Yeah.
He could put anything
This
out
is
on
fascinating stuff. This is really fascinating stuff because, most people's picture in their mind of Charlie Finley, and they don't know about the travails that he had to go through in Kansas City. They have no idea.
Actually, the misconception that we're clearing up on this show, Jerry, who I might remind everybody joined us late along the way, we've been talking about this, is the amazing contribution that your dad, Nancy, Carl Finley, had on all of this. Mm-hmm. Charlie is looked upon as the Lone Ranger, where in fact, my misconception was that your dad took the reins when they moved out here. Your dad was involved in it before, all the way.
Very, very much so. Dad let Charlie. Dad, like I said, when Dad thought Charlie was feeling down, and when my friend Marcy had a contest in '75, the 10 most eligible bachelors in the Bay Area, she asked Dad to be part of it. Dad suggested Charlie, and it was supposed to be bachelors who lived here, but Marcy did what Dad suggested, and it made Charlie so happy. It helped his self-confidence. So Dad did that to help Charlie feel better, because if Charlie felt better, things ran better out here. And Charlie was more open to what Dad said should happen. And a lot of things, like when I mentioned Dad attending that organization with the team doctor, Charlie never went. Charlie was never invited to go to that, and he was never out here that much. So there were a lot of things Dad knew Charlie did not know, and the people here knew Dad was in charge. But Dad could always predict Charlie and what Charlie would say, what Charlie needed, and if Charlie didn't feel good, Dad knew how to make him feel better.
Well,
but there was a lot. But in the early '70s, when we were doing well, that created some stress because Charlie sort of got cocky.
Right. Now, how did your dad put him in his place?
Well, the first time was writing that book and threatening to go public with it, and having a $9,000 advance from Life magazine didn't hurt.
Okay.
And I still have that contract, and it was just for a percentage. And then I remember visiting Kansas City, and a man in overalls handed Dad $2,000 or $3,000 cash for a small percentage. I don't know who it was, but I know that people involved in Kansas City thought that would be a really, really hard-hitting book, no pun intended. Charlie did not want it out. So Dad did that to try to make Charlie fight. Like, in other words, we did this together. We were a team in Kansas City, and if you don't stay focused on the team, then I'm leaving, and I'm going to put this book out.
Yeah. Another thing, and then I'm going to turn you back over to Jerry because he's new to the book. I didn't realize how big a part your dad played in the new ownership when they turned the team over to the Haas's, and how responsible he was for basically the second dynasty along the way.
Yeah, mentoring. In fact, Charlie never knew people like Cornell Meyer. That was Dad's friend, and Mr. Meyer did a lot of social functions for the A's in 79, 80, 81. And it was Dad who told Charlie, the writing was on the wall, you got to sell the team. The team would not have been sold if Dad had pushed. And I know in books a lot of people have speculated on why Charlie sold, and they blame the divorce. And no, it was Dad. It was
his influence, in other words.
His idea. That's why Dad, when Dad was at the 79 winter meeting in Kansas City, happened to be in Kansas City, Dad arranged to have Billy Martin as our manager start the next season.
Oh,
yeah, that was Billy Ball was fun.
And if you notice, Charlie stayed out of that. You never saw Charlie tell Billy what to do or any kind of friction between the two. You won't hear about that.
Yeah, well, I think
I had assumed that Billy came in after Charlie sold the team.
No.
Correct.
We had the team 100%.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but Billy wore out his welcome when he destroyed the restroom in the clubhouse. He was blind drunk that night.
Oh, I was living with Dad at on Harbor Bay Isle, and I know so much about that because I was older, and Dad would come home and tell me what happened. Dad was close to Billy because Dad brought him in. And I remember Dad told me Billy was going to be with us, and when Billy was moving out, he told me about his 16-year-old girlfriend and all that. And so what happened was Roy Eisenhart, I don't know if you remember, but he used really big words. I mean, they do that in law school. Yeah. My husband has been known to do that. But he's toned it down. And Dad can do that, but he knows when to tone it down. Well, Dad said that Mr. Eisenhart would be waiting for Billy after games, and he would want to analyze the game they just played. And Billy would want to take a shower and have a beer.
Yeah.
And that's how Billy was used to things. So, Dad found all of Billy's destruction put on the floor of Dad's office, and they were trying to send Dad a message like, you deal with him. He's out of control. So Dad talked to Billy and asked what happened, and Billy said he wanted his own space right after games, and that he thought he was being talked down to. He didn't use the word condescending. Dad used that, but Billy said that Eisenhart was using big words he didn't know what they meant, and it made him feel small. And Dad just told it to me like that, and I could see both sides because now you see these players all interviewed after games, and we used to give them space unless it was a championship time or All-Star or something. But Billy was used to his space for a while. I mean, he didn't want a microphone or someone in his office wanting to analyze what happened.
And Billy did drink a bit.
Oh, he always did.
Yeah, he did.
He did with his Yankee friends. I mean, he was known for that.
Yeah.
But
he led.
I kind of understated that, by the way.
He led Mickey Mantle astray when he was with the Yankees. That was one of the reasons he got traded.
I was going to.
And didn't he get traded to the A's? He got traded to the A's.
He did after the Copacabana instance, where Hank Bauer beat the hell out of some guy, and Billy got the blame. And George Weiss needed to get rid of him.
Charlie tried to tell those
Casey
guys.
tried to save him for New York, so that in itself is an interesting story in Billy's life.
We had people.
One of the most fascinating characters that ever was, Billy Martin.
By the way, as you read the book, Jerry, Marty Lurie told me that in my book I say something that no one had ever told him, and Marty said he'd interviewed Hawk about this. It's the gun event in Kansas City, '67, and Lou Krause had a gun and apparently had shot it out of his hotel window after a game.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, which he did apparently he'd like to do. And there were some complaints, and Charlie just didn't want any trouble for his players, so he arranged to have the gun put somewhere. And and so he just wanted to make sure the players weren't in trouble. And of course he lectured Krause about doing that. So that's but Marty said no one had ever really been able to tell him what happened with the gun.
They knew about the incident, but they didn't know the backstory. Okay, that's very good.
Exactly. And
good knowledge.
And then there's something in the book you'll see where I mention a paternity suit against Campy in I think 66 or 67. What was ridiculous about that? The only reason I mention it is because the person suing also listed Charlie and the team, which is really, Morgan says that's really bizarre. And from
looking for deep pockets is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And so because of that, Charlie went all out with the defense, of course, and then went on the offense. And the woman ended up, from what we understood, not giving birth for 2 or 3 years. So it looked
not birth.
Say that again.
Well,
she wasn't pregnant. That's why she
exactly.
didn't give birth for 2 or 3 years. And of course now with DNA they couldn't get away with that.
Oh, I know. And Charlie had a feeling she was just trying to take advantage of Campy.
Sure. Oh yeah.
That was a cute way you got me there. I wasn't paying attention. She didn't give birth for 2 or 3 years. That's this way of.
There was no pregnancy.
No. Okay. So that's that goes with any celebrity, anybody with bucks nowadays is subject to it. And to be honest, in the world that we live in, folks bring on things, put things on their own plate. Doesn't take much nowadays. We're reading stories this week about Kevin Spacey, Dustin Hoffman.
Oh my goodness! They're all saying now, if I did it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I apologize. It was horrible if I did it. I was a drunken thing, and I had no idea.
They're getting it out. They're saying it. What else can you do?
Yeah.
Well, you know, the
crazy world we live in. Hey, listen, we got a time factor coming up here. This has been very nice.
Jerry, do you have any? How far have you gotten?
I'm up to chapter 9.
Okay.
I'm just starting the Beatles chapter.
Oh, wow. That was amazing. That really was. And I still have their ticket. It was in white and green. I noticed we didn't put yellow. We were very conservative using yellow at that time.
Did you get a chance
Nancy,
to
do you have any World Series programs of the 73 season when they played the Mets?
I probably do. I have a ton of.
Well, if you have an extra one, save it, and I'll buy it from you because that's probably the best baseball year of my life.
Really, the Mets.
You know, that was happened in
73 Mets,
1973.
and I. Pardon me?
You know what?
Jerry?
You know what else happened in 73? Couple key things. You had the Watergate hearings, which was riveting television. But more important, you had Billie Jean King go up against Bobby Riggs in the Battle of the Sexes. I just saw the movie. Go see it.
Absolutely. An intriguing movie, how that changed the culture. It led to Proposition 9.
You got it.
It was wonderful movie,
I remember
wonderful times.
My world was small. I just remember Marcus Foster being assassinated by the SLA.
Yeah, and then 74 was the kidnapping.
Sergeant Ivy saying that Charlie was number 1.
Really?
And that Jerry will tell you that kidnapping was so entrenched. I remember listening to KGO 24 hours a day, kidnapping Patty Hearst. Unbelievable.
That was in between. Yeah, that was like 6 months later, I think. So it was,
yeah, it was riveting. It was just riveting.
well,
Right.
I had to stay out of school half a year because I was being homeschooled, which meant the Coliseum and going to museums, because the FBI told Dad that it was too risky.
Yeah, I believe it. But Billie Jean King had a connection to Major League Baseball. You know what that was? Yeah, her brother was Randy
Moffett.
The
Really?
relief pitcher for the Giants.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness! My high school vice principal was, oh gosh, I can't remember his name now. Lopes. His cousin was on the Giants. Lopes?
You mean Davy Lopes?
Yes, thank you.
He was a Dodger.
He was a Dodger.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Dodger. Yeah. So
we say that with some disdain around here.
But it was good
in Northern California.
He would drive me home sometime, and he watched out for me on Dad's behalf.
Nice.
Yes,
nice.
Davy Lopes is also a trivia question. There was the Dodger infield of the 70s of Ron Cey, Bill Russell, Davy Lopes, and Steve Garvey. The trivia question is, what was the infield that stayed together the most years? And these guys stayed together for 6, 7, 8 years without any changes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great time
too, right?
Yeah.
What a rivalry, and we have to talk about the A's rivalry one day down the line with the Angels. That kind of pales in comparison to the Giants and Dodgers, but it's real and it's ongoing, and we'll catch up on that.
You mean currently?
We'll always have something to talk about.
Yes.
And
with the Angels, I just remember being able to go to Disneyland when we played them, because if I wanted to travel with the team, we always stayed in the Hyatt, which was across the street from Disneyland.
Wow. I had kind of a blessed life, Nancy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did Gene Autry give you comp tickets? That's the more important thing.
Of
you get in for free.
Of course. If
wonderful.
I wanted to go, I wanted to get into
so
Disneyland.
much. It cost me a fortune to take my kids when we lived down there.
Right.
Really?
All because Autry was giving comp tickets to the Finley family.
Uh-oh.
That's it. See how it is?
Well,
you got some
the mule saw Disneyland before I did, and so I wanted to get in there. Charlie took the mule to Disneyland.
Really?
Oh, yes, he did, before any of us kids went.
Okay.
So,
he really loved that mule, didn't he?
He did. I'll have to show you his writing on the back of pictures, like a parent writes about a child. Yep.
All right, Nancy Finley, Jerry Feitelberg, I'm Ralph Tyko, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. It's Oakland sports, past, present, and future. Next week we'll pay a little attention to the Warriors and what will always be the Oakland Raiders, no matter where they go. Even when they were in L.A. the first time, people thought of them as the Oakland Raiders. Am I right about that, Jerry?
They shouldn't have moved.
They'll always be the Oakland Raiders.
Yeah.
Even if they go to Las Vegas, they're going to be the Oakland Raiders forever.
Yes.
Absolutely. So we'll give them some coverage. Oh, I got to pay some note. The greatest coach in the Bay, arguably the greatest coach and / manager in the Bay Area, John Madden, is back on CBS after a long health hiatus to recover his health. He's doing Monday mornings and Friday mornings, talking about the Raiders, talking about football life. He's terrific. It's great to hear him back. The local CBS station, KCBS, is carrying him, and it's great. He's an icon.
Yes.
He certainly is. And when you think Oakland football in the 70s, you got to think of John Madden.
Yes.
No
Absolutely.
question about it.
And we don't realize how young he was, even when he retired. I think he was 34 years old when he retired from the Raiders. He had ulcers or something like that. You wouldn't think a guy like that would ever get ulcers.
Yeah, and he was great with Pat Summerall on the broadcast, and he put a little bit of oomph into his broadcast. It wasn't the bland stuff that you get now.
Oh, and the innovator of Madden, the football, the game on the video game. That was easy for me to say.
He's an icon.
He is definitely that.
Yeah.
And so glad to have him back in the East Bay area. It's life can be good once in a while, and we didn't talk about anything negative all segment, and let's keep it that way.
And thank you for the questions, Jerry.
Oh, you're welcome. I enjoy this immensely. You guys are great.
Thank you.
So do both of us. We're glowing that we got you.
Okay,
Third man.
Ralph, I gotta jump off. My daughter is on the phone.
Oh my God.
All right, adios, both of you,
everyone.
and everybody listening. If you're so inclined and you like our broadcasts, you take some lightly used children's books and collect them in the neighborhood, put them in boxes, bring them to the Head Start program wherever you live, and get kids reading early on and getting ready to go to school. And
I got a bunch of baseball books for you I can bring over.
That's the Head Start. If you got baseball books for me, that's the Head Start program. I'll read, not color, someday. I aspire to that.
Okay.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Nancy. We'll be back soon.
Thank you.
Next week, same time, same place, new number. Adios, everybody.